Hello and welcome to this week's episode of The Wire Wrap. I'm Jahnavi and with me today I have transparency rights activist Anjali Bhardwaj and editor of the news Minute Dhanya Rajendran.
Thank you.
Thank you both so much for coming.
Thanks.
Now on Sunday afternoon, comedian Kunal Kamra released a new special on YouTube titled Naya Bharat. It's a 45-minute video that covers a range of issues including the Ambani wedding, Sudha Murthy's simplicity, Ola e-scooters catching fire, a whole range of issues. He's also done a few musical bits, including one that doesn't name but alludes to Maharashtra Deputy Chief Minister Eknath Shinde and how he splintered the Shiv Sena to align with the BJP. Now, soon after this video was released, a mob of Shiv Sena members reached the venue where it was filmed, not where Kamra was at the time, and attacked and ransacked it. The day after, municipal authority officials also went to the same spot with hammers and said they were demolishing illegal sheds built on the premises. Now this venue has said that they are going to, which is the Habitat Comedy Club in the Unicontinental Hotel in Khar, has said that they're going to close until they can figure out a way to protect both free speech and their own safety. And an FIR has been lodged against Kamra based on the complaint of a Shiv Sena MLA and also against those who attacked the venue. Maharashtra Chief Minister Devendra Fadnavis has asked Kamra to apologize to Shinde. Shinde himself has tried to distance himself from the vandalism, but also said that every action has a reaction. Kamra has said that he's not going to apologize because he hasn't done anything wrong and he's not afraid of this action, and that he doesn't think it's illegal to make jokes about political leaders. Now, all of this has happened very rapidly in the last 3 days. It's not the first time that a comedian in India has faced harassment, a police case, even arrests in some cases, based on jokes that they've made. What perhaps is new is the way the venue was attacked first by a mob and then the authorities within a couple of days of the video being released. Dhanya, what do you make of this whole saga?
Yeah, so like you said, it's not the first time that comedians are facing action, but I think this whole attack on Habitat, which is the place where it happened, that's another fear factor they want to launch, right? Even if you host something like this, you could be targeted. So I feel like this is setting a new trend wherein the places where these programs are hosted, then everybody will perhaps move online. Then you will pull down online videos. There's no end to this, right? It's just one intimidation tactic after the other. Of course, what I found funny was that whole phone call where somebody calls Kunal Kamra and asks, "Where are you?" And he says, "I'm in Tamil Nadu." He says, "Now, how to reach Tamil Nadu?" So that was quite funny. Yeah, so he is now, we were actually reporting yesterday about how the Tamil Nadu police is in a tizzy now because they don't know if Maharashtra police will land up.
Yeah, because he's asked for a week from the Maharashtra police to respond to the summons they've issued.
Yeah. I mean, we just finished this Ranveer Allahabadia's joke thing and everybody's outraged over that joke. Now everybody's outraged over a new joke. First thing, we take things too seriously. Even if we are really offended by a joke, tweet about it, leave it at that. Who goes and vandalizes things and says, "You come here, we'll break your bones"? So I think that Devendra Fadnavis and Eknath Shinde, etc., will have to step in and say, stop it. Otherwise, it is not going to stop, right? And I'm actually scared for Kunal Kamra's safety if he ever tries to come back to Maharashtra. Okay, he can now do shows in Tamil Nadu, but how does he step back into Maharashtra?
Well, I think, Janvi, what we are seeing is really a very shrinking space for free speech and expression. And like Dhanya also said, and you said, that we've forgotten how to take a joke and really just going after comedians who might be doing political satire. There might be statements that they make which, you know, somebody might find offensive, but what is it that as a society we are then going to do, and more importantly as institutions? So somebody is offended by the jokes that he cracks and then goes to file a complaint, and the police very promptly files an FIR, and you know, there is defamation, there is all sorts of charges that are mentioned, and then there's vandalism of that place. I mean, it's just a chilling effect that is caused by people who are allowed to do some of these acts, and then the BMC steps in to actually send out a clear message. I mean, we have been talking of the bulldozer Raj in different kinds of contexts. And what we saw in this context again is a clear misuse of power, where to send home a message by the administration, the BMC immediately steps in as if suddenly discovering that there is some illegal aspect to that venue and comes and takes it down. And this is really sending out a signal that we are not going to tolerate if there is free speech. I mean, if there is free speech, if we are a democracy, these kind of things have no place. And there will always be elements who will get offended, who might sort of, want to take the law into their own hands, but they need to be reined in. We need to say, the institutions need to step up and really say that, look, we are a democracy. We have the right to free speech and expression. Somebody's made some statements. I mean, okay, even if a complaint is made, it needs to be looked into, that, is there a violation of a law in this? And the law has to take its own course then. I mean, people taking the law into their own hands, then the BMC landing up. I mean, these are very concerning things.
Yeah, I think it's not just, like she rightly said, it's about people are offended and they just want to do something, right? But what makes it dangerous is that it's also state sanctioned.
Absolutely.
And we are seeing this in many states. For example, I think a week ago, we saw the arrest of 2 journalists in Telangana. Now, I may agree or disagree with the content they put out. These 2 women journalists put out a video in which a farmer, or apparently so-called farmer, is abusing Telangana Chief Minister Revanth Reddy in the choicest of words. Now, should they have beeped it? Should they have blurred it? All those are other journalistic questions, right? Now, if Revanth Reddy felt really offended, file cases against them, file for defamation. Instead, you use your police force to land up at their houses at 5 in the morning. What is a need for
They're not
doing
a
that,
threat.
right? Exactly.
Absolutely.
And then trying to charge them under organized crime. Not any simple section, but for organized crime. Of course, the court struck down the section. 2 days ago, we saw in Tamil Nadu, where a YouTuber called Savakka Shankar, he has apparently been attacked by sanitation workers because he said something on air about them. But now a union of sanitation workers has said that they didn't do it. Somebody went to his house, his aged mother was there. They put feces inside his house. And there's a lot of criticism because he's been a vocal critic of the DMK. So I think everywhere the governments have to distance themselves from what is happening. In Maharashtra, it's unfortunate because the BMC is part of the administration, right? And they have sanctioned this whole.
However much you distance yourself from the vandalism, what happened the next day was
That's
very
also
much the
vandalism.
same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, for the Chief Minister of Maharashtra to say that, he's going to be followed around, he wouldn't be able to live in the country, he'll have to flee. I mean, these are statements that then show the state's intent. And I think that that's really what is concerning, because like I said, I mean, we could have people who feel offended, but then what is the response in a democracy that we expect from institutions, from the police, from municipal authorities, and then finally the judiciary as well?
I think what has happened though as a result is maybe a lot more people than otherwise would have watched this YouTube special have ended up watching it. And he's also received a large number of donations from people who feel like what he's facing is unfair.
Same thing happened with Vikkadan, right? When Vikkadan put out the cartoon where Narendra Modi is shown as shackled, who would have seen the cartoon except Vikkadan readers? Now everybody has seen the cartoon and the government uses emergency powers. So I think this is done at various levels. One is the government uses all the powers that it has given itself using these digital media rules, etc. Second is, of course, this roadside vandalism, which is done by their own people. And third is using the police force. I don't know which is worse anymore.
Okay, moving on to the second subject I wanted us to talk about. Now, on March 14th, there was a fire at the residence of Justice Yashwant Varma of the Delhi High Court. When the firefighters were there to try and put out the blaze, they reportedly found huge sums of cash in one of the rooms that was damaged by the fire. So then the Delhi Commissioner of Police, the Chief Justice of the Delhi High Court, submitted their reports on the issue to the Chief Justice of India, along with the video that the firefighters had reportedly taken, which showed this cash burning or burnt cash lying in this room. The Supreme Court Collegium then met and they decided to transfer Justice Varma back to his parent court, which is in Allahabad, and also initiate in-house proceedings. Justice Varma has said that this room is not even part of the main house, it's sort of a storeroom outhouse, and it was open and unlocked, and him and his family had nothing to do with this cash that he's never seen. Now, the Chief Justice of India, Sanjeev Khanna, has decided to make public the reports he received and the video, which were the basis for the in-house proceedings. It's all available on the Supreme Court website. Now, transparency rights activists have really applauded this move, especially because of the opacity with which the Supreme Court has handled allegations against judges in the past. Now, there are some questions that these documents that are now public raise. The first is, where is the cash, which has apparently disappeared. Nobody knows exactly how much it was, though there are some numbers doing the rounds. Another is why the Delhi Fire Service chief, who told PTI right after the incident that no, we didn't recover any cash, then the next day changed his stance and said yes, cash was there. And a third is, the police was present at the site because this was a high-profile fire. Could they have acted faster? These are all questions that the judges' 3-member committee that is conducting the in-house proceedings, that even visited Justice Varma's house this morning, is likely to ask. But Anjali, I wanted to ask you, what do you make of what has happened so far, and particularly the Supreme Court steps in this?
So, Jahnavi, this is a very, very serious case because we all know that judicial corruption is something which plagues our judiciary. It's not a secret. And unfortunately, what we have seen in the past also, when there have been cases where complaints have been made, even about the ex-Chief Justice of India, Justice Gogoi, when complaints of sexual harassment were made, there is a huge secrecy around the process. Now, some of it, is justified because we do want the judges to function in an independent manner. But I think what has been happening is that in the name of independence of judiciary, there is just too much opacity that is allowed, too much secrecy that is allowed. And that has kind of taken very many shapes and forms. So in this particular case, like you said, questions are being raised as to, if there was discovery of cash, why wasn't anything done? Now, that's something that a lot of people are wondering, that, why are we asking today what happened to those sacks? If they were discovered, that's evidence. Then why was it not seized? Why was that area not sealed? Now, the reality is that judges in our country have sort of really carved out a lot of immunity for themselves, and to the point that an FIR also can't be lodged against a sitting judge unless the Chief Justice gives sanction. Now, in a situation like this, what is it that the police can do? What can't they do? What happens when a complaint comes in? So the Campaign for Judicial Accountability and Reforms, we've been consistently raising this issue that when complaints are made, there is a grievance redress mechanism. There has to be transparency in the process. We are very happy that a lot of information, including, what are the reports that have come so far, what is the response of Justice Varma, the video, etc., have all been made public, because finally, how does an institution ensure that there is public trust? It's only when you allow people to actually see what is happening in terms of, how you're dealing with complaints, what happens. And I think that so far there's been such a strong element of secrecy that public trust is bound to get eroded when some of this happens. And judicial corruption, one of the things that there has been a consistent demand is that assets and liabilities of judges should be in the public domain. They are playing such an important role. They are, as public servants, it's really important for people to be able to know, look at their assets and liabilities and see, are there any assets that are disproportionate to their sources of income? Now, there are many figures that are floating around of the amount of cash that was found in his house. Somebody says 15 crores, somebody says something else. Of course, it's burnt. They can't even find those sacks anymore, but it would be difficult to say. But clearly the allegations are that there was cash that was found. If you look at the Delhi High Court website, for instance, and look at the assets and liability disclosures of judges, you will find that if you click on Justice Varma's name, there's a dummy PDF file. So there is absolutely no information on his assets and liabilities. The judges turn around and say that, look, we are supposed to give it to the Chief Justice of India, and it's a voluntary exercise. Now, when some of this happens, it becomes such a huge issue of trust, of faith in the judiciary, what is happening. Now, the only way for people in the country who finally all institutions in a democracy have to serve it really comes down to, do they have information? How do they monitor? And when an instance like this happens, there has to be a lot of transparency, which has to be inbuilt into the system. So we are very glad that in this particular case, with a lot of alacrity, information has been put out. But there is no surety that in the next case, this is what will happen. So, what we have been sort of urging the judicial system to do is to put in place frameworks where there is transparency. If there is any wrongdoing, if there are complaints, they are dealt with in a transparent manner. Of course, we sort of are cognizant of the fact that there will be certain sensitivities, but apart from that, some things can be redacted, as they have been in this particular case as well. But there is no reason to keep everything under wraps. So it's a very serious matter. It raises very serious questions of judicial corruption, judicial accountability, and we really hope that, going ahead also, it's dealt with in a proper manner, and the probe is done in a timely manner, in a time-bound manner, and the report is put out also for people to see.
Dhanya, as someone who's been watching this, what do you make of the situation?
So I don't want to repeat the same things that Anjali said, but a couple of other points I want to make is that, one, whenever I see things like this, I'm like, okay, so what is going to happen after 1 or 2 weeks? Probably nothing. There have been so many cases before this where money has been found on judges. There was a case in, I think, Andhra Pradesh, where the judge was supposed to have taken money from Gali Janardhan Reddy during the mining scam. There was a case, in fact, I was telling my colleagues we should find out what happened, because we also forget, right? We are into the moment, we cover these stories, then we just completely forget. So there was a judge, and there was another judge who came and said that 100 crores was offered to him for giving the bail. Imagine 100 crores for a bail. So there are cases like this across the country. But like she said, it's all shrouded in secrecy. The police are hardly allowed to file FIRs. It's all hushed up within the court. I'm using the word hushed up with all sense of responsibility, because half the time they do not want to act against judges, even if it's for a communal comment, if it's for corruption, whatever, they don't want to act. And if they do, it is kept very secret and hardly does it go to the police. So I hope that this doesn't get finished with just this committee which the Supreme Court has set up, but it does go to the police and there is an investigation as to who gave the money. The question is not just about, okay, how much money was found and who placed it, but what was it for? That is the main question that we have to answer here, right? Then there are so many theories doing the round, but I feel that's the elephant in the room. And the second, very different tangent, but because we spoke about freedom of expression in the beginning, and now we are talking about this judge's case, this whole contempt of court has to be re-looked into. Half the time people are scared to report about things, write about things, even question, because of this sword dangling above our heads saying contempt of court,
Even
right?
the news of this incident came only a few days after
Exactly.
all of this had happened. Absolutely.
Yeah, and imagine the Times of India published it. They would have gone through so much of thinking within their newsroom, back and forth, as to whether they should publish this or not, right? So, I mean, yes, judges need to be protected because we need an independent judiciary, but does that mean that the contempt of court can be used as an excuse for people not to question anything, right? So,
we've been talking about transparency and the access to information, and the third issue I wanted to discuss is very much tied to that. Now, there have been reports that sometime in the next month, the Union government plans to finalize the rules under the Digital Personal Data Protection Act, which was passed by both houses of parliament in 2023. Now, however, a close reading of the act by some rights activists and lawyers has revealed some serious concerns about the law. Now, the first is the way the DPDP Act, which is a bit of a tongue twister.
but better than, what is it? What is the new one for IPC? Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita. Better than that, yeah.
Yeah. So the way in which it amends a very crucial section of the Right to Information Act, which is Section 81J. And this is, and the DPDP Act intends to exempt all personal information from disclosure under the RTI Act. Now, the RTI Act already had safeguards for personal information and said that it can only be denied and not released in situations where it has nothing to do with any sort of public interest or public activity, or is an unwarranted intrusion into privacy. But if the DPDP Act has its way, there will be no if, what, nothing. If it's personal information, they don't have to release it. This will mean that even information that is clearly in the public interest, an example that has been raised is, the names of willful defaulters, they won't have to release because it's personal information. Another part of the act that has caused concern is the classification of anyone who collects information, individuals, entities, as data fiduciaries and making rules for them that are very stringent. There is a provision to set up a data protection board under the union government, and this board will have the right to fine entities around rupees 250 crore, I think, if they're seen to be releasing personal information without the requisite permission. There's also no mentioned exemption for journalism under this law. Now, just yesterday, a group of opposition MPs have written to Information and Technology Minister Ashwini Vaishnaw, particularly about the RTI section, saying that this section of the DPDP Act must be repealed. Anjali, you have been one of the people who's been raising awareness about these issues. What are the dangers you see of the DPDP Act as it stands?
So, Jahnavi, let me first say that the DPDP Act really is a way of centralizing control over the entire personal data regime in the country. There are two ways by which people can access information. One is the Right to Information Act. And a data protection law must harmonize both our fundamental rights, the right to information and the right to privacy. It does neither. So it has gone with a wrecking ball behind the Right to Information Act. Section 44 of the Data Protection Law amends the Right to Information Act to say all, like you said, all personal information is exempt under the RTI law. Now, why is this such a big issue? A lot of the use of the RTI law in the last 20 years has been around demanding accountability from those in power. And how people do that is they file right to information requests and access granular information. So, for example, we know that in India, corruption goes from the highest to the lowest levels. People want to know that if they're not getting their rations, they're not getting their pensions, they're not getting their scholarships, they want to know who is getting it so that they can actually check, they can monitor, they can be social audits, public audits. Now, if in the name of data protection, all of this information is put out of the domain of the public, then we are going to have a situation where people are going to go back to the pre-RTI days where they were not able to hold the government accountable for this kind of corruption. Again, non-performing assets. We hear of these large capitalists who are running away with people's hard-earned money. It's people's money in public sector banks. And then their loans are written off. So people want to know who are these people, and they've been filing RTI requests. In fact, the issue has gone up to the Supreme Court in the Jayanti Lal Mistry case, where the court said, of course, you have a right to know. Now, this kind of information, if we are going to be told that because it involves somebody's name, we cannot give it to you. Names of contractors. I mean, just look at the number of bridges that collapsed in Bihar in the last 6 months. Now, do people not have the right to know who was the contractor, who was given these contracts? There are so many other places. Electoral bonds case. There was such a long struggle, after which the Supreme Court said that, list should be out in the public domain. People have a right to know. Now we are going to be told who is donating to which political party. Who we can't tell you because it will involve names of people. We don't want to, compromise their personal data. So essentially, there's going to be a chilling impact on all exercises in the country of accountability and anti-corruption, because we are just not going to be able to get the information that we needed and access through the Right to Information law to take this forward. Now, as if that was not bad enough, the other way in which journalists, researchers, campaigns collect data is by going out there, doing fact-finding, doing surveys and collecting data. So I run a small group where people come, Right to Food, and people come and tell us, we don't have pensions, we don't have rations, we put down their names. Dhanya and you would go out and you would be doing fact-finding on many cases. You would be collecting information which involves personal data. Now we are all being told that you will all be data fiduciaries under this data protection law, as will be the big companies, political parties. Anyone who collects personal data will be a data fiduciary. They have to comply with very serious and stringent consent regulations. If you are collecting, processing, analyzing data which has personal information, you have to have consent. And if there is a complaint that's lodged against you for any violation, then the complaint goes to a completely Sarkari data protection board. So the reason I call it Sarkari is that it's going to be set up by the central government. The members and the chairpersons are going to be appointed by them. They will have the power to remove them. And this board has the power to impose penalties up to 250 crores, which can be doubled by the central government through a schedule to 500 crore rupees. So you are giving this board the power to impose penalties up to 500 crore rupees for any violation of this law. And this is going to become like a weapon. So if you can imagine, there is anybody who raises concerns, raises questions, collecting data or using data that's already available because you're processing it and which the central government doesn't like. I mean, there just need to be a couple of complaints that are filed against you, which can be filed even by the government. And the Data Protection Board will then be able to impose potentially fines up to 500 crore rupees per case of violation. So we are going to have, this is, like a sword hanging on anyone who's doing an exercise in accountability. And there is no exemption for journalists. So, I mean, internationally, this particular law, because before it was brought in, the previous versions had a journalistic exemption. Now there's no longer a journalistic exemption. So the intention becomes very, very problematic of bringing a law like this in. Now, even political opposition. No political party today can survive without making lists of people, having their WhatsApp numbers. We all know that we regularly from all political parties get messages before elections. Now, all that will be required is that a few people will go and complain against a political party or an opposition party, and it will be taken up and there will be fines imposed of multiples of 500 crore rupees on that political party. So how are they supposed to survive? And the very worst thing, Jahnavi, is that in the name of data protection, all of this is being done. But who is the largest data repository of personal data? It's the government. It's these big companies that are holding our data. And the government is saying that the central government will decide who is not covered under the law, who is not a data fiduciary. So potentially we are going to have a situation where UIDAI, which holds all our biometric data, etc., we will be told that's not a data fiduciary. Geo or some other company which is friendly with the central government, we will be told they are not a data fiduciary. So then that means that it's not even serious about protecting people's personal data or privacy. So we have a situation where both right to privacy and right to information activists are saying this is a very bad law because this is neither protecting the right to privacy nor the right to information. This is really just a weaponization of data, where the government is almost creating a weapon which it can use at its own discretion, because they've given themselves so many discretionary powers under this law that they could go after anybody who they don't want to do their work under this law.
I think Anjali's done a really great job of breaking down many aspects. I guess if I could ask you, Dhanya, to focus on the impact it may have on journalism, because the RTI Act is something that has been a very useful tool for journalists across the country. From, any sort of information now from the government is hard to get, and the RTI remains one of the few tools which, provides reliable information. And then, of course, there's this other thing of, the way we collect information and what is allowed and not allowed to publish, who we need permission from to be able to publish. So if you could talk a little about that.
So I think first we have to address the amnesia which general public and we generally have. When the digital media rules came, everybody said, so what's a big deal? Journalists should have some sort of checks and balances and censoring. And that's why we bought a 3-tier of grievance redressal mechanism, right? What happened finally? The government has weaponized this law. We have seen Caravan's article taken down. We have seen Vigadan. So many examples. Media Wonder channel was shut for 2-3 days, the Malayalam channel, 2-3 months, the Malayalam channel. So it's always the government which weaponizes the law and perhaps people who are close to the government. That's one, right? Second, if they use the word intermediaries in the digital media bill, it is data fiduciary here. This is just one or the other way to ensure that whoever the government does not want or does not like is brought under certain laws, right? Like how Anjali was explaining. Tomorrow, if we are to go report a story and we are collecting facts or we are collecting data, we have to be registered as a data fiduciary, and the government will decide if we are or not. But when she was speaking, what I was actually thinking is, forget everything else, forget the threat to RTI journalism. What is the opposition in this country doing? Like, are we educating the public about the dangers of this? Because what Anjali just now said is not a problem only to journalists, right? I mean, half this country don't want journalists or journalism organizations. They think everybody is sold out and everybody should shut down and go. Okay, fine. What about normal people? You are not going to get access to information. Every company which collects information, of course, there should be some rules. I'm not saying there shouldn't be, but how stringent are they? For example, the previous bill they tried to bring, which is the broadcast bill, that said ridiculous things like if you are making a video, even a travel blog, you have to have a committee. That committee has to then say yes to the, like imagine you're in Ooty and you're taking a video, you have to show it to two people who will then say yes and then you can upload. Yeah. There was public outrage, which is the reason why that bill never saw the light of the day. It may come back in some other form, you never know. But we have failed to educate our masses. We have failed to tell people what the problems are. I mean, I would see an Anjali tweeting every day or speaking, but how many avenues are there where she will go and say this? Our mainstream media is not giving the platform. Our opposition parties are least bothered. And that was what I was thinking while she was talking as to, it is so bad, but we have failed to actually tell people the repercussions of this, right? Hopefully there will be some awakening now that we are at this moment where the rules are going to be formulated. The rules have not come out, right?
No, the draft rules were put out by the government for consultation. 5th of March, that deadline got over. And from what we hear now, in April, the rules are going to be finalized and the law can become operational then. So this is really upon us in that sense.
Is there a case in the court against the...
Not yet. It's not operationalized yet, the law. So there is no legal case right now. I'm sure there will be legal challenges because this is really violating a fundamental right, the right to information, and it is also not protecting the right to privacy. But of course, we've seen how long court cases can take. The electoral bonds, we had a fabulous judgment, upholding right to information, but it took 7 long years to come. So, and the kind of damage that things like these can cause to democracies like ours, it's unimaginable. I mean, so you can imagine that, when they're saying we'll protect personal data, we've seen that in all the elections that have happened in the recent past, the big question has been whose names are added and whose names are deleted from the voter list. Now, the voter list has our names, it has our addresses, it has our photographs. So tomorrow we are going to be told, no, the voter list is going to be pulled down potentially under this law because we have to protect personal data. So, I mean, what we are really talking about has very, very significant ramifications on our democracy at every level. So, it is very important, like you said, Dhanya, that we need a situation where the opposition parties wake up to this. I would even say that, right-minded people within the ruling party also, I mean, they need to think about this, and everybody needs to be able to say that this is not acceptable. And of course, people need to be made more aware about this because unfortunately, these are also technical laws, which unless they're really broken down and there's a lot of talk about it in the media, it's very difficult for people who are so busy with so many things to engage with. And we haven't seen the kind of opposition that this really requires.
Yeah, one can only hope that lots of complaints are filed against maybe the PM website, maybe some news channels, and then they would all wake up to the problem of the act. Yeah.
Before we close today, Dhanya, I wanted you to talk a little bit about a story that you did earlier this week, the News Minute and the News Laundry, about a very famous and awarded police officer, Kiran Bedi, and how she used Delhi police to surveil her own daughter when she believed her daughter was part of a definitely unethical and perhaps illegal visa racket of some sorts. And then what I found to be a particularly striking part of this story was it's possible that during this surveillance operation, they had some information on a rather gruesome rape that took place in the city, and that information was not passed on to the investigators. Could you talk a little bit about this story?
Yeah, so the story is based on thousands of emails and around more than a dozen tapes. The surveillance was done at the behest of Kiran Bedi. This is in 2003. So she was in New York at the time, and she figured out that her daughter was partnering with a man who was running a visa racket. So they would basically call up. Now, private parties helping in visa is not illegal per se.
Travel
but-
agents do it all the time.
So they were actually calling the embassies and they would ask for the visa, but they were taking a lot of money from these people. And I think there were complaints that people were not getting the visa. So the money was not being returned. So these complaints were reaching Kiran Bedi. Yes, she was a concerned mother. Nobody is saying she wasn't. But as a concerned mother, she told Delhi police to surveil these two people. Their phones were continuously tapped. Now, during the tap, this thing goes on for 4 or 5 months. We don't know if it went on for more, but whatever we have is that it went on for 4 months. In between this, a Swiss diplomat is raped in Delhi. She was outside the city auditorium here. She was coming out after a film festival and she was raped. And during one of the conversations, this man, his name is Gopal Suri, he tells another person almost a month later that, hey, the Swiss diplomat raped, did Shahji get called? We don't know who Shahji is. That's the only mention. So the cop was listening to the tapes, sent an email to Kiran Bedi saying that this has come up in the conversation. I am telling my senior officials. It's a mystery as to what happened later because we asked the investigators of the Swiss diplomat rape. 10,000 people were rounded up. It was one of the biggest manhunts in Delhi. Nobody has been arrested. He said he did not know about this lead, that nobody informed him. So the question is, why was that not informed? Kiran Bedi, of course, there was a 5-column article in the Times of India yesterday where she has said that she was a concerned mother, and as a concerned mother, she went to the Delhi police. Okay, that's fine. You tapped the phones. Was any case taken? Because there was enough proof that something was wrong, right? Was an investigation done? That she's not talking about. And the second, the Times of India did ask her about the Swiss rape. She said, I don't know. I just asked them to listen into my daughter. So that's the question that we have to ask. Like, what happened to that lead? Did you ignore it? As a story, I was quite excited with it because, it's like going back to proper journalism of listening to things. And there were 2 journalists on it, Anand Magnale and Sumedha. They put in a lot of work. I wish the story had come maybe a little earlier, but it had to wait for its time. Yeah.
Okay, thank you both so much for joining me. We'll draw to a close for today, and thank you all for watching.